I'm gonna share with you the truth about dating. And this video is for anyone who is upset with their relationship, their dating life, or their love life, or even if you're just not over the moon, over the top happy with it, because ultimately, your relationship makes up one of the most important factors in your entire life.
Hey, baby, I brought some water.
Thank you so much.
I love you.
Love
Have
you
a great
too.
day.
Sorry about that. Everybody's relationship should be something that doesn't just make them feel, okay. It shouldn't just be something that just goes on in the background. Your relationship should be the most important part of your life. It should be something that has you screaming from the rooftops about how happy and how excited you are. And if it isn't, if you are not completely in love with your love life, or worse, if you're actually really down about it and it makes you sad and you feel lonely, then you're going to want to listen to everything that I share with you. Because, maybe this sounds like you. Maybe you're somebody who's lonely, or maybe you're somebody who you talk to somebody and you start a relationship and it just fizzles out and goes nowhere. Maybe you're somebody who got talking to a really close friend and you really got on well and you misread the signs and you thought maybe there was a relationship there, but actually there isn't. And you might have damaged a relationship with a very good friend of yours and you're not sure if you'll ever get to see that friend again or if they'll ever see you or respect you in the same way. Maybe you'll get ready to go out on a date and when you turn up, the person just isn't there and you're left standing there wondering if they're ever going to turn up. Or maybe you're sending messages to people and they're not responding. Or you're on online dating profile websites and you're reaching out to people and they just never seem to respond to you. If any of what I just said resonates with you, if that's how you feel, if you are not over the moon in love with your dating life and your relationship, then you need to watch this video. I have been a dating coach for coming up to 14 years now. I have traveled the globe teaching everywhere from Korea to America to England to Germany to all over, South Africa, Australia. I've been all over the globe teaching people how to improve their dating and relationship life. I've been featured on the Today Show, on Steve Harvey, on CBS, Fox News, you name it, I've been on it because I understand the truth about dating and I want to share it with you. I want to explain to you how you can get your ideal dating life. Now, today, at this point in life, obviously I'm in an incredibly happy relationship. I love my life. I have beautiful children and I'm motivated to go out there and help other people because I wasn't always like this.
That was my biggest problem. I spent too much time looking at myself and be like, oh, I'm not attractive enough, or I can't do this, or I would psych myself up to the point where I can't.
I really wasn't going out that much. I had a lot of approach anxiety.
Before this program, I was struggling with my confidence and my lack of charisma and being able to go out and put myself out in a social situation and not feel judgment from others.
I didn't know what I was doing. It was just happening. I didn't know if it was just like my looks or they like me or what the situation was.
I didn't always have the dream dating life. In fact, if we go back to my teenage years in high school, I was actually voted least likely to ever get a girlfriend. Now, in the media, they always talk about this story about how, I was voted least likely to ever get a girlfriend. And now I found myself, not only in one of the best relationships I've ever been in my life, but, I go out there and I help other people do that. But I've very rarely told the story about how I got voted to be least likely to ever get a girlfriend. And I want to take a moment and share it with you because sometimes it's the damage that happens to us in our teenage years that really affects us going forward. I was in a secondary school in England, which is like high school for any Americans that are watching this. And when I was hanging out in school, the teacher put up on the board, what are we all going to be when we get older? And it was like, who's most likely to succeed? Who's most likely to make lots of money? Who's most likely to end up being the Prime Minister of England, et cetera, et cetera. And so we went through and all the kids would vote. And then the teacher left the class as we were waiting for the next teacher to arrive to teach the next class. And there was some kids in the class that jumped up on the board, erased all of the options and replaced it with like, who's most likely to be a loser? Who's most likely to end up being homosexual? And a whole bunch of other things. And one of them was who's most likely to never get a girlfriend. And they went through and voted for everybody. And I'd got off quite lightly. Nobody voted for me for anything. So I was kind of pleased with myself. And then who's most likely to never get a girlfriend? And they all put my name down there. And I know it was a silly thing. I know it was just a prank. I know it was just kids messing around. But it stuck with me. And it really affected me. And in fact, it hit me so badly that I started to believe that I would never get a girlfriend. And at those formative years when, everybody's hooking up and going on dates, to be 15 years old and think, wow, no one is ever going to love me. I'm never going to get a girlfriend. I started to absorb that and believe it. And it got even worse when I finally got the courage to ask out a girl that I've wanted to date for so long. My entire high school life, I wanted to date this girl. And I saw her in a corridor as we were coming up to the final end of year dance. And she's walking towards me. She's got two of her friends next to me. And I finally pluck up the courage and I say, "Hey, Sam, would you want to go to the end of year dance with me?" And she looks at me, and before she can respond, her two friends go, "With you, never. Sam's got better taste than that." And they walk off laughing. Now, looking back, knowing what I know about dating, I recognize the fact that Sam never actually rejected me. There is a chance that maybe Sam would have gone on a date with me if her friends hadn't been around to, to make fun of me and to make me feel bad. But at the time, I didn't see it that way. I didn't actually analyze relationships for exactly what was going on, and I would try and read into it. And that's what a lot of people do in their dating life. They read into things and try and imagine scenarios, and try and extrapolate the data. But actually, when you truly understand dating, when you get the truth about dating, you really just want to read things as the actual facts, and use that. And that's one of the key elements that I teach people, which I'm going to teach you a lot more about. I'm really going to dive deep in this and help you understand everything about dating. So it's really important that you stay with this, even through this story, because I just want to give you that background so you know where I've come from, so that my dating life wasn't always easy. It wasn't always beautiful women bringing me bottles of water when I'm filming videos and lovely children and everything. Life wasn't always like that. And so that rejection hit so bad that it took me years to get the confidence again to get back out there and start dating. And eventually I did, get a girlfriend or two, but whenever, not at the same time, but eventually I would get into a relationship with somebody, I would start dating, and the relationship would kind of like start to collapse, and we'd be less intimate, and we wouldn't be, hanging out as much anymore. And before I knew it, all of my partners would move on and start dating somebody else. And sadly, it often happened while I was still dating them. So these people that I was with, they were cheating on me. And I let it happen. I'll be honest with you. I was in my early 20s and I was so desperate to not be single. I was so desperate to fight back against being the guy that was accused of being the guy that will never get a girlfriend, that I didn't want to be alone. I didn't want to be single. And so even though I knew the people that I was dating were going off and dating other people, I let it happen because I just didn't want to be alone. And then eventually, I suppose they would just get so upset with me that they would leave me. And it all culminated when I was 25 years old. And I'd been in a relationship with somebody for about a year. And this was probably the most damaging relationship of all the relationships I'd had. And I'd really only had about 3. But this one was the worst. The woman that I was dating, I would pay for all of our bills. I paid for the rent. I paid for our food. I paid for absolutely everything. And her money was used to, for fun activities. She would use it for us to go to dinners and things like that. And what that meant was I had absolutely no control over what we did for fun or where we went. And this often meant that I would be left at home after a long day of work while she would go out and, see some other guys that she was with, and she'd spend money doing that while I was paying the rent each month. And it was just a really bad position to be in. And we got to a point where, to get a little bit, intimate with you guys, we'd stopped having sex for about 6 months. And she just kept telling me she wasn't in the mood. And I realized that she was sleeping with somebody else. And I didn't really know what to do about it. I just let it happen. And one day, I say to her, I'm like, "Look, I can't go on like this. We can't keep doing this." And so we have a bit of an argument. And, she says, "Okay, fine, we're done." And we break up. So that day I go to work and my roommate is sitting at home, and he says, "Hey, your ex-girlfriend's turned up and she wants to collect her belongings. Is that okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, that's absolutely fine. Just make sure, she only grabs her stuff." And I come home later on that night and my entire apartment has been wrecked. She took everything. She took my computer, she took my bookshelves, she took my TV, she even took my shower curtain. And my roommate was kind of like sitting on the one piece of furniture we had left, which was the sofa, which she didn't take. And I said to him, I was like, "Dude, how did you let this happen? How did you, allow this?" And he said, "Dude, she came in with this really big guy." He goes, "I think it's her boyfriend." And they were laughing and making out and just grabbing your stuff and taking it. And, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what was yours. I didn't know what was hers. And I just let it happen. And to be honest with you, watching this, it was a really tough moment for me. And it seems like so far away. Since then, I've had such an incredible life. But it was such a painful moment that I just collapsed. and I didn't know what to do. I didn't even cry. I was almost just like in shock, just sitting there. And my roommate was there, and he's like, "Can I do anything?" And I was like, "You did enough, man. Like you did enough. You just let this happen." But then I realized that I can't blame him for that, right? It's not him that let it happen. It was me. I was the one that let it happen. And there was this moment where I could see where I could have turned into a really horrible human being. I could have blamed every woman that I had ever been with, everybody that I'd ever dated, and it could be their fault. Like, they're always cheating, they're horrible people. But instead, I took a different approach, and I started imagining, what if I'm the problem? And this came from a really good friend of mine years ago when I was like about 18 years old. He said to me, if everyone around you says the same thing, you got to ask yourself if maybe you're the factor, you're the one. And I've realized through years of teaching dating that most often, if your dating life isn't what you want it to be, if you're not having the ideal relationship that you want, there's a good chance it's you. And we want to blame everyone else. We want to say, like, it's your fault that no one wants me. It's your fault that I'm alone. It's your fault that, that you don't want to be with me. But it's really you. And if you can hear that and you can take it and you can be open to the fact that it might be you, then you can change it. And that's exactly what I did. Now, this happened when I was 25. When I was 23, a really close friend of mine gave me a book. And it was a book called The Game by Neil Strauss. And it was, actually, you can see it up there. I got 2 copies, one of them signed by Neil himself. We've come on years later and become incredibly good friends. And he said, Adam, you're going to take this like a duck to water. You need to read it. And I didn't. I just put it on the shelf and ignored it until I was 25. And when I was 25, I had this moment. I was like, you know what? I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this dating thing and get good at it. And I became obsessed with reading the book, learning about these guys that can go out there and meet women and date them. And about halfway through the book, I thought, I don't want to read about it. I want to do it. I want to fix this. And so I went out there and I looked for a program where I could learn how to get better at dating, right? And I found these guys on the internet that were running this workshop that you could pay for. And it was the most awkward thing in the world. I remember I found out about it and I signed up. And it was so sketchy. They told me I had to meet them in a basement of a Chinese restaurant in Chinatown in London. And I had to bring my money in an envelope. And it was like a couple of £1,000. It was a significant amount of money, almost $3,000. And so I turn up with this envelope, and this guy is just sitting there eating his noodles. And he barely looks at me. And I'm like, hey, are you Catnap, I think his nickname was. And he's like, yep, you Adam? I'm like, yep. And he goes, you got the envelope? And I hand him the envelope. And he hands me a little Post-it note with an address on it. And he's like, be there Saturday at 10 a.m. And I walk away, and I can't help thinking, am I being scammed? Is someone just stealing money from me? What's going on? But I turned up at 10 a.m. on the Saturday. And sure enough, it was real. They were doing this workshop. And I got to be honest with you, it was kind of weird and kind of awkward. And it wasn't really what I expected. First of all, a lot of the guys were really friendly. Everyone was really, really open. But nothing really seemed to work. And these guys were going out there and trying to prove to us that you could go and talk to anyone. But they weren't really having any successes. I wasn't seeing them go up and talk to women and have attraction, But they weren't getting rejected either. Women were kind of like laughing and giggling. And ultimately, everyone was just having a good time. And I took away from it that, one, a lot of the people that were doing this were kind of full of crap, I hate to say it, some of those people have become really good friends of mine, but behind closed doors, they'll admit themselves that they're not as good as they profess to be. They're not as amazing as they could be, or at least they want you to believe. But also, it's never as bad as you think, right? Like a rejection, when somebody rejects you, if you're not doing anything weird, if you're not upsetting people or being creepy, then people don't tend to get upset. They just, they can have fun with it. And the biggest takeaway I took was that I don't have to be scared of meeting people. I've just got to make sure I do it in the right way. And the moment that I realized this was actually during that program where I saw 11 guys, one after the other, go and talk to a woman standing outside of a nightclub. And they would go up to her one after the other, and she was just like really upset. These guys were just like really pissing her off. And it got to me, and the guy's like, you need to go and talk to her. And I was like, I really don't want to. I don't want to do this. Like, this is an uncomfortable situation. The woman's obviously upset. You guys are upsetting her. You're not really thinking about this. And he's like, you got to do it, man. That's what you paid to do. You got to do it. And so, bowing under pressure, looking back at the time, I may have been able to do something else, but I bowed under pressure. I went up to this woman. And I said to her, I was like, hey, I'm really sorry to bother you. I just saw all these guys come up and approach you. What was that all about? And the way I approached her, she spoke to me differently. It wasn't the same as the other guys. She's like, yeah, it was really weird. These guys just came and spoke to me. And we started talking, and we got on really, really well. And at the end of it, she gave me a phone number. And I got swamped. All the guys on this program, it was my first ever workshop, and they're like, hey, how did you do that? How did you get her contact details? And I was like, I just spoke to her like normal. I was just normal, but I wasn't scared. I wasn't worried about talking to her. And in doing that, I realized that even though I didn't know anything about any of this stuff these guys were teaching, they all had these gimmicks and tricks and routines and lines, that actually, if you do something right, you can get a real connection with somebody, providing you don't weird them out, you don't do anything wrong, and providing, you actually have something interesting to say, and you got a real connection. And so I had this spark that maybe you could get really good at dating. Maybe you could be somebody that could have the dating life that you want without weird gimmicks or lines or techniques or any of this strange stuff, if you really applied yourself and weren't scared of the outcome. If you weren't trying to make anything happen, you were just talking to people just for the fun of it. And it was just this idea at the time, nothing really big.
But now, after he told me, it all makes sense. It's not just the bits and pieces I've heard. Now he kind of gave that full thing.
And, the seminars were very informative. There was the guidance, but the fact that everything that happened came directly from me.
Once I got here and I saw that these are real, genuine people that are looking to help you and improve your life and your social skills, I just felt much more comfortable being around these people.
And I went away for the next few months really analyzing what worked. And I started buying books about dating. But I didn't buy the pickup artist manuals or the seduction books or the dating guru books. I didn't buy any of those. I bought psychological books. I read about what actually was the triggers to attraction. It's actually a great book, The Handbook of Relationship Initiation. I read that. It's a really thick psychological book. And I started reading all these psychological studies. And then I decided I would test them. So I would go out onto the streets of London and I would test the theories that I'd read about in the book to see what worked and see what didn't. And I learned the University of Chicago ran a study to find that the ultimate icebreaker was to say to somebody, what's your favorite pizza topping? But I looked at why, and the reason why is because it's an open-ended question. I realized that there are better open-ended questions that you could use and better ways to get talking to people. And I started writing down the results of the things that worked. And before you knew it, I was getting swamped. Everybody wanted to learn from me. They would come up to me and, it was they found that guy Adam that's really good at dating. And I really didn't think I was good at dating at the time. I was just going out there and trying to learn, but things were working. And I was definitely going on dates more. I was having these wonderful relationships with people, and I was definitely on something. But these guys, every time I went out, they'd swamp me. I'd get surrounded by 40 guys when I went into the club. Like, what are you doing? How are you talking to people? And I didn't really want to get swamped. I didn't want to have this around me. And so I decided that I would withdraw a little bit and focus on getting good at dating. And actually, I came up with a name for myself so that people would leave me alone. And if you look online, you'll probably be able to find it. But my name I called myself was AFC Adam. Because all these guys at the time when they were doing this dating stuff, they had these weird names, so you couldn't identify them. And I didn't really want to hide who I was. In fact, if anything, I'd learned that being yourself was so much better, but you couldn't just be yourself, right? That was the problem. People would say, just be yourself and you'll be fine. But you'd be yourself and nothing would happen. So there had to be a different version. And it was actually about being your best self, but learning exactly what that meant was the hard part. And no one ever was teaching that. And that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to teach people, people like you, to be your best self, to work out exactly what you have to do to be the most attractive version of yourself, and then bring that person and talk to people in that way that made it work. So I came up with this name, AFC Adam, because in the book, The Game, the letters AFC means average frustrated chump. And it meant somebody who wasn't any good at dating. So I gave myself that name so people would leave me alone, and it worked. And so I'd go out to the bars, everyone would leave me alone, and I would focus on meeting people and learning about attraction. And one of the big things that I took away from this was I only wanted to tell the truth. So when I would meet people, I would say to them, hey, I'm learning about dating. I'm not looking for a relationship. I'm just looking to learn about it. And the people I dated found it fascinating, and they would learn with me. And it was a really cool part of my life. And I wanted to get better. I wanted to improve this. And I had a friend of mine that worked at FHM magazine, For Him magazine, and he came over and he was like, hey, I want to write an article about these guys that do this dating stuff, and I heard that you do it. And before I know it, this guy was writing an article about me. And I would go out to bars and he would follow me, and it turned out to be a 5-page spread in this men's magazine that ended up with me being featured in Maxim magazine and Ask Men magazine, and they even made a documentary about me on my journey to do this thing. And about the same time, I realized that a lot of the guys that were teaching dating like I said, they were really full of crap. Like they didn't really know what they were doing, and they were teaching these weird gimmicks. I remember this one time there was a dating coach from Germany, and I saw him slap a girl's hands, and I was like, "What are you doing?" And he goes, "Oh, I'm just teaching her a lesson." I was like, "Don't ever hit somebody. Like, it's disgusting." And this was like something that these guys were teaching in Germany, and I knew that I needed to do something. I needed to get up there, and I needed to start teaching. And so I stood on a stage in Hollywood for the first time ever. I was so nervous, but I wanted to share my version of dating, what it meant to truly get good at dating. And when I stood up there, I said, "Look, we're standing in a room full of guys that are all trying to get good at dating. Everyone here wants to improve their dating life. And you're all standing up talking about how great you are. And yet, the only person in this room that's turned up with a date is me. Literally, I'm the only person here with a woman who's standing next to him. And I gotta ask you guys, how good are you if you can't even get a woman to want to come and hang out in this room?" And I got a standing ovation. Everyone was shouting and cheering. And I realized that that was the biggest problem with this male movement of dating, was it was just a bunch of dudes hanging out, talking to each other, and there were no women. They weren't actually listening to what women were saying, and that was a huge weakness to them, to help them improve.
I realized in the beginning this wasn't, kind of a scam, because what he was trying to tell me, it wasn't, all the dirty tricks, like say this and get this result. He's giving you the general roadmap for everything.
I was able to go out and dance and be able to not feel insecure about where I was in the bar, or about like what other people were thinking about me. I was able to just go out and have fun and realize that it's all just a mental block. Once you can do it the first time, you can do it after.
I'm fully confident I can take it back with me.
And so I ended up becoming known as one of the world's greatest dating coaches. And, life's been amazing since then. But there was one key piece of the puzzle, one thing that I found that truly made a huge difference. And it was something that, all my psychological studies had proven to me, or had shown me in studies, that this was the biggest trigger in attraction. And I found myself the hard way that actually it was the biggest trigger. And I'm going to do this sequence video. So the video that you're watching now is part of a sequence. And in the very next video, I want to share with you what that one big trigger is. I'm going to share with you how I found it, how I discovered it. And what was fascinating is I learned it the day after I had what I thought would be my biggest success in dating. So I had this amazing success in dating, and then the next day I failed so badly, and it was that failure that taught me that lesson, that turned out to be one of the biggest triggers in attraction, something that is not only proven in studies, but like I live by to this day. So I really want to share that with you, and I want to take a moment to thank you for taking the time to watch this. I am so passionate about helping people because I don't want people to go through the pain that I went through. And, there might be women watching this, and I want to be really clear about this. The techniques that I teach, they're not gender specific, they're not relationship specific. You can be monogamous, you can be polyamorous, you can be, you can identify as whatever gender you want, it doesn't matter. The techniques that I teach work because they're truly just the real triggers of attraction, or the truth about dating. And I want to share it with you. I want to get to know you. I want to share with you my story so you can see where I came from. And I'll invite you to, use the comment section below to put up any questions you've got. If there's something that you want help with, let me know if this video helped you. Did this give you some insight into my journey and what I've gone through? And also to let you realize that, the ultimate truth about dating is that you can change your dating life. You don't have to get stuck in whatever situation you're in. And that's, if I could give you that one big truth, that's what it is. It's, you can change your dating life, providing you learn the key things that help you improve.
I didn't think those things were possible, and I'm definitely taking all that back with me. And, I'm going to teach it to my friends, and it's game on.
I would recommend this program because once you get here and you see you're surrounded by other people with the same goals as you, it's a lot easier to try and get those goals finished. So with me, with my insecurity, I saw these were other people, some other guys that were insecure. And then when we went out to the bar and we were all having fun, it was so much easier. So I'd recommend this for sure.
It's black and white. They tell you exactly what you need to do. It's not some magic. It's nothing like that. It's a real deal.
And so over the next few videos, I'm going to teach you each of those things. There are 3 things you need as far as I'm concerned. One of them you'll have heard of before, but you've never been taught how to actually do it. One of them no one even wants to talk about because people are so scared about talking about it. And yet you not only have to talk about it, you have to get comfortable with it to make it work. And the other one is the biggest realization I had, which is what I'm going to share with you in the very next video. So make sure you stay tuned. Make sure you don't miss out on that. And leave me your comments down below to let me know what you thought of the video and if it was helpful for you. Thanks for watching.